Hello. Today is a third line day, and we're looking at the 40th gate in the third line, which is called humility. So the third line, obviously in this gate of aloneness, it's going to have difficulty in establishing any kind of bargain or any kind of contract, because it's the line of bonds made and broken. Making mistakes in the kind of contract that it gets into is sort of built into the mechanic, really. There are some lines that have something written beside them or above them, and some that don't. I call these the lifetime learning, and I think that's a BG5 terminology. They're sometimes called introduction lines or overview lines. And the reason for that is that some lines, they have a different kind of structure at work. They have this essence of the line that needs time to develop. Some lines are born with the ability to get into it straight away, but others need this development time. So if you're dealing with a lifetime process or an ongoing process, it's not something that's going to properly express until you've matured in life. It's a little bit like the way that that the sixth line comes off the roof, for example. It's around that Chiron time. And it's in the same way as a profile. We don't have to do anything about our profile, about learning it or embodying it. It comes through us quite naturally as we progress, as we mature in our process, and the incarnation cross the same. Then it's the same with these lifetime learning or overview or introduction lines. So all this to say that the third line in the 40th gate has an introduction line, and it says a calculated mode in deliverance to avoid attracting the attention of negative forces. So in this context, a negative force is anyone who wants you to work when you're not ready, or anyone who wants you to commit your willpower when you're not rested enough. These are negative forces. These are people who are really not for you. In the exaltation, it says the subtlety to enjoy aloneness without having to flaunt it. The capacity of the ego to avoid negative forces, even if it means being alone. So all third lines, as we know, are lines of adaptation, and as such are lines of trial and error, So itchy nose, excuse me. In this line of humility, it will be a trial and error process to find out about aloneness. What does it mean? Bumping into different ways of experiencing aloneness. This one works for me, this one doesn't work for me. It's that constant energy of discovery that comes through. Then you find out in your aloneness how not to attract negative forces, how to stay in that aloneness and be correct within it for whatever correct means for you. I mean, it doesn't mean that you never attract anybody or you never attract negative forces. It actually means that you will keep on attracting negative forces until the point that you finally learn, oh, I'm better off on my own. I'm better off here. And that's, you've bumped into those negative forces enough. And again, then it's not bad. It's not a morality thing, don't get caught up in a head trip on somebody who's bad and someone who's good. It's just someone who's pulling you out of the energy that you have to give, who wants more than you're prepared to spend, if you like, that energetic bank that you keep topped up as an ego being. So this energy in this gate, it's fundamentally social and communal, because that's the nature of the channel that it finds itself in. It really is about the other, but it's the right other, always, for all of us. So this line of enjoying aloneness without having to flaunt it, it's about not telling everybody, oh, I've done my work, I'm going to rest now and you can carry on working. It's not about that at all. It's about enjoying your quiet time, your time between having to use your willpower and having to go back to work again, and then resting again. And it's it's the pause, it's the breath between, it's the gap between the notes. Was that Miles Davis who said that? The gap between the notes there, you could say that. The line 3 in gate 40 is quite happy being alone, really. You know, the 40 can be very suspicious. It's suspicious of the emotional affection that's coming at it from the 37, for example. Might not quite understand what the bargain is there that's coming at it. It can always see if you're being very nice, and it wants to know what you're after, because that's the bargain. It's always got that eye on that. Yeah, okay, I can see you're massaging my ego. What is it you want in return? The 40 is always a little bit wary. You know, what am I being expected to deliver here? And if the deal doesn't look good, of course, then they're not going to take it, because their natural instinct is to be alone, you know, to be left alone, denying the fact sometimes that the other can be of any value to it at all. So I don't need you, go away. That's that gate of denial coming in. I don't need you. But of course, we all need others, because on our own, we don't really experience life in the same way. We need the conditioning that other people bring to us in order to have the experience that we're here to have. It's again that thing of having the correct others, which if we're surrendered to our vehicle, then our magnetic monocle can make sure that we meet the right other. And we do have those experiences we're supposed to have. But this third line is someone who can deny friendship. You know, I don't need friends. Friends just take up all my time. I don't get anything in return for that. I'm not going to do that. In the detriment, we have the ego arrogance that demands attention and gets it. The capacity of the ego to demand attention. So this is someone who will demand attention by demanding their contract the moment they bang into you. You know, like, they don't let you off the hook on this at all. The moment you meet these people, you know that you're not going to be able to get out of doing things without paying for it. It's also saying that the ego will demand attention by doing all sorts of things that it shouldn't, just because it wants that massage. Yeah. The lower trigram, you know, we know they don't have social skills. We've been learning this through all of these gates we've been through. The 3740, the channel of community. No, it's a very important social channel. It's the only social channel that automatically appears because it's that opposition channel. You know, the 40 and the 37 are opposite each other in the wheel, as well as opposite each other in the channel. So it's quite a dominant force in the world. It's a very consistent genetic pattern that we have. And it's a pattern that is really important to us as a species. It's the basis upon which civilization is built, the supportive community that thrives in the material plane. All these kind of keynotes that come into tribal circuitry and then into gate 40. And it's the ego that makes that supportive community possible. But then when you bargain with them, you know, when you get into the lower trigram, you know, how can I say this? Okay, so you you go into the lower trigram, you meet someone who is a lower trigram being. That's a better way of saying it. You go into the lower trigram, uh, and the skills to recognize what community is and who they should make the bargain with and what kind of bargain they should make is not something that they're really equipped for. That's what I was trying to say. They can get into a lot of trouble. Yeah. It's not easy being lonely trigram when you're faced with a social situation, because there's an inbuilt suspicion, and gate 40, as we've just heard, is a suspicious gate anyway. It's like, then what's happening at the other end there? What does it mean to me? How's it going to impact me in my process and in my experience here? How can I stay correct within that? Because that can be another part of it too. Gate 37, the gate at the other end of the channel there, it has a smile, the gate 37 smile, and it can get behind the defenses of gate 40 and their desire to be alone. You know, it's a smile that can make them forget everything that they were thinking about. They even forget about making the bargain. But it's a little bit of a trap in a way. You know, I mean, the ego will work for that smile because it feels good to get that kind of affection from gate 37, which is such an affectionate gate. So when it is affectionate, it's a real warmth to it. It's, you know, it's a very authentic affection in a way. And the 37 is going to smile at that 40 that's done all that work for them. And and it's very appreciative of everything that it's doing. So the 40 then ends up working even harder because it really enjoys that smile. The upper trigram knows that there's a smile at the end, and it knows what that smile is doing. It knows the trap that it can fall into if it's not careful. It's kind of a tender trap, you could say. I think that's how it's known. And it's part of the evolutionary process that helps us to bond with people. So it's not that it's unnecessary. And the 37 isn't, of course, doing it consciously. It's like, oh, they're lower trigram. I'll go and smile at them because then they will fall into my trap and they won't know what they're doing. It's not really playing out like that. I hope. I mean, if the whole world maybe knew about human design and was working in these mechanics, you might find it playing out in that way. But it's just deeply unconscious behavior for the most part. Somebody with the 37 might well do the smiley thing, to a 40 and find out, oh, it works when I smile at this person like that. They give me a little bit more, or they'll do another favor for me, or whatever. They don't know they're a 37 and a 40. I mean, that's not part of their knowledge base. But the way the mechanic is expressing is part of their experience. So it's really interesting to get into it and to pick apart these, the relationships and the way that they play out. Well, it's interesting if you're a human design geek. Maybe it's not for the rest of the world. Negative forces, I might have mentioned this before, but a negative force in the context of gate 40 is a force that does not allow the will to operate properly, which basically means it doesn't allow it to rest. And because this is the whole thing with gate 40, it must rest and it must be allowed to rest. Sometimes it needs to be encouraged to rest because it will just keep working. And this trial and error process of the third line, it takes life and the lessons of life to learn how to develop this ability to rest when you're tired. The ability to accept that you're better off alone than to be with negative forces. Because sometimes being alone can be a bit uncomfortable for some people. And this third line is not better off being alone as a general rule. It's just better off alone than with a negative force, someone who's going to abuse its energy. And no ego should be alone forever. None of us should be alone forever, but the ego must go out and do its business. It's, helping support the community. It's just that it's better off being alone than with someone who is a negative force. So the grounding to humility comes through the 37 line 3, which is called even-handedness. The definition of even-handedness is being fair and impartial and not favoring one side over the other. So maybe there is a quality of support that comes through this 37-3 who is trying not to attract negative forces. It can bring a calming influence, perhaps. Not breaking every single bond in sight, but using strategy and authority to run the wave of who should and shouldn't be allowed access to that precious willpower. So we start the day with a channel of acceptance because the 17 and the 62 are both activated, but it's only for a little while because the moon is then going to move on and then we won't have it anymore. But while we do, it's a channel between the throat and the ajna. It's a logical channel and it's about the collective process. And I talked about it yesterday in the second line. The moon moves on at 11:12 BST, moving into gate 56. This is the gate of stimulation, the storyteller who is constantly on the lookout for new ideas that can be woven into stories. And this is not about facts. It's not about validating. It's not about repeating patterns and so on. It's about perceptions and feelings and taking experiences and sharing them. There can be a real talent to spinning that colourful tapestry, which then inspires others and also teaches others. This can be a very valuable teaching tool to use the story as a medium. And then the next gate is 31, and that's at 21:59. It's the gate of influence. It's a logical throat gate, which can communicate a vision for a new direction. It can show others how to move forward for a more secure future. It's in a leadership channel, which is kind of obvious when you listen to the description of it, but it does need invitation to lead correctly because it's in a projector channel, it's a projector gate. And then we have gate 33. This is the mirror to the 31, and that's tomorrow morning at 8:51. This is the gate of privacy, the retreat. Both throat gates, both looking down at the G center, both collective. One is logical, this one is abstract. Gate 33 has the gift of expressing wisdom, wisdom that has been gathered from experience. And it can have a strong need for privacy. You know, it gives it time then to contemplate and to ponder all of those juicy secrets that it's heard coming up from gate 13 at the other end of its channel. So those are our gates today. That's our journey, our exploration today. Have a happy line 3 day, and I will see you for line 4 tomorrow. And until then, as always, thank you for joining me, and go gently.